Back in my day, when I first started shooting film, all I shot was Kodak Colorplus. It was about £4 a roll, and I took some really good shots with it. But recently, Kodak has decided that they're going to raise prices across all film stocks, and they're going to make Kodak Colorplus the same price as Kodak Gold 200. Now, that made me think, for once, what's the difference? Well, I've got a roll of Kodak Colorplus and a roll of Kodak Gold, and I'm going to put them in the exact same camera and take the exact same shots, and we're going to compare them. And where better to do it than one of Britain's classiest of all towns, Blackpool. One of the most notable differences is shown here. Kodak Colorplus on the left has a slightly warm vintage hue, whereas Gold on the right has a warmer daylight balanced hue. This vintage feel on Colorplus isn't really surprising. It was produced the same year The Godfather was released. You guessed it, 1972. It's an older, slightly lower quality emulsion, whereas Kodak Gold, introduced the year that Princess Di was killed by the media, was introduced in 1997. As you can see, the golden hue here with Kodak Gold is really prominent, whereas with Kodak Colorplus, you still have this vintage feel, but it's certainly not as strong as the Kodak Gold. Just let me apologise, there's a small light leak on some of the photos. It's got nothing to do with the film at all, it's just something to do with the camera. Despite being completely tired with my shit, Katie was happy to sit for a few photos. And it's here that we can kind of see a slight difference in some of the contrast in these photos. Kodak Colorplus has a bit less exposure latitude and therefore a little bit more contrast than Kodak Gold. It adds to the sort of vintage feel of Colorplus, and it's probably one of the reasons why a lot of people really love it still. Kodak Gold isn't really different, but it has slightly more forgiveness, and this is probably just down to it being a slightly more modern emulsion. Another issue with Colorplus's low exposure latitude is that it doesn't really do that well being underexposed. You can push or pull it a very small amount, but after maybe 2 stops, you're going to just really see why you wouldn't really want to underexpose or overexpose too much with Colorplus. Gold, on the other hand, has a little bit more latitude and you can push it a little bit further, but neither of these are really made for that kind of stuff. In a lot of these pictures, I'd say there really isn't that much difference. I mean, Gold is a little bit more punchy, but to be honest, these are very similar. You can obviously see the yellow hue of Gold, and that's probably one of the notable differences. But if we'd have taken some shots indoors, maybe with a bit of lower light, maybe you would have seen how they sort of stand against each other. But really, there isn't too much in it. But let's take a look at the grain. I don't know how I did that. So with Kodak Colorplus, it's supposed to have just a slightly more harsh grain. And I think you can notice that a bit when you look at these shots. On the close-up, you can sort of see what I mean. When we take a look at Kodak Gold, you can see that the grain is just a little bit finer. I wouldn't say it's a dramatic difference, but it's there. I found this comparison quite a lot of fun. I've actually shot a lot of both of these film stocks, but mainly Kodak Colorplus, and I loved shooting with it. It's probably down to the vintage feel that I didn't even really know was there. I just knew that I enjoyed shooting film. I like Kodak Gold, but I think the hue can sort of take over a little bit. Personally, I don't like a film stock that feels like it's the picture. And by that, I sort of mean like Cinestill 800T. Like that takes over the picture quite a lot because of what it does. And with Kodak Gold, I wouldn't say that that is exactly what it does, but there's elements of that because of how strong this gold hue can be in some images. I wouldn't say that there's too much difference between these two. And now that there's no price difference involved, it really comes down to personal preference. Do you want a film stock that has quite a yellow hue? It's got fairly fine grain. It's got sort of okay exposure latitude. If so, go for Kodak Gold. If you want a film stock that's got a vintage look and feel, a very slight yellow hue, quite a lot of contrast, it doesn't have great exposure latitude, but it might not matter if you're shooting mainly in the daylight, then go for Kodak Colorplus. Those are really the main differences. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter. We'll all be dead one day, so just shoot what you want. Thanks a lot anyway, guys. I hope you really enjoyed this one. Probably gonna do some similar to this because I quite enjoy the comparison videos. Obviously, it would be great if you wanted to drop me a like, a comment, a subscribe. You want to tell me how much of a douchebag I am or how beautiful I am, maybe? Maybe. So yeah, all right, okay, take care, bye.